Well, staying positive is a big question in general, not only in in the present times. Being positive is a big challenge for all people. We always have challenges in life. Now the challenges are a little more difficult. The main advice I would give people, and it's going to sound a lot easier than it actually is, and I try to put it into practice in my own life, and it's far from perfect. It's really a project that we have to engage in for the course of our lives. But that would be to keep in mind that we're doing the right thing, to make up our minds that taking the poison is the wrong thing to do. Giving it to our children is the wrong thing to do, and we're not going to do it no matter what. And knowing that we're doing the right thing, we should be positive about that. We should be joyous that we're doing the right thing, even in difficult times, or especially when times are difficult. And that should give us joy, that we're serving Hashem when times are difficult. Again, it's a challenge, but we have to remember that everything that happens in our lives and in the world is coming from Hashem. And he's testing us and he's challenging us, and we have to serve Hashem with joy. So just knowing that we're doing the right thing and being firm with that we're not going to consider taking the poison, just making up our minds that no matter how difficult it gets or what we have to do, we're just going to do it, should give us joy, the inner satisfaction of knowing that we're doing the right thing, as opposed to worrying about what other people think. The fact is, the people who have taken the poison, look around, they don't seem to be very happy either. Most of them are still wearing masks. They're terrified. They're scared of other people. They're miserable. They're angry. I don't think that taking the poison is actually making people happier either. Quite the contrary, especially the long-term effects. I mean, many of them we're pretty certain are going to be getting sick, and probably far worse down the road, God forbid, but it seems like that's what's likely to happen. So, taking the poison is certainly not an answer for finding happiness. On the contrary, doing the right thing now, even if we have to pay the price in the short term, it's going to give us long-term happiness. So it's been in the news recently that Israel is planning to cancel many of the restrictions associated with the virus and the vaccine, and possibly even the Green Pass. People are very excited about this. Is it going to last long term or not? What are the reasons behind it? People are arguing, like, what are they really thinking? Why are they really doing this? All kinds of theories going around. And from my perspective, I don't think it really makes any difference, because the bad people in charge are going to continue to be bad people. Evil people are going to continue to plan evil things and try to do evil things. And, maybe they will find an excuse. They'll magically find a new strain and a new reason to bring back the restrictions, or maybe there's some other tricks up their sleeve. But bad people are going to continue to be bad people. So whether the restrictions stay in their current form or they're modified into a different form down the road doesn't really make any difference. We can't let down our guard. We can't become complacent and think that the game is over and we've won, because they're giving us a little bit of breathing room and giving us a little time and space to catch our breath. They're certainly plotting other bad things, and we can't just go back to normal and act as if nothing happened over the last year. They're criminals who have to be brought to justice. There was a lot of evil and lies that were perpetrated over the last year and 4 months or so. We have to bring the criminals to justice. We have to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And at the same time, we know that Israel is planning on forcibly vaccinating its children. And I use the word force because they are planning on forcing them. They're going to make life hell for the parents and the children who don't want to go along with their program. So the fact that right now they're giving us a little bit of a carrot and they're not giving us a stick doesn't mean anything. They have a lot of evil plans up their sleeve. We have to fight them. We have to make sure that our children are not poisoned. We have to continue to strengthen people, educate people, and get ready for the next battle, because it's definitely not over. First of all, nothing really has changed. The Torah way of fighting a war is that you utterly vanquish your enemies. You don't mow the grass, as Israel likes to put it. You don't weaken them and send them a message and knock on rooftops and worry about the so-called innocent civilians more than you worry about your own. You don't worry about world opinion, public opinion. You utterly vanquish your enemy. That's what other nations in the world do. I mean, Putin, nobody messes with him, because, if you mess with him, he's going to wipe you out. The same it is with the other tough leaders of the world. The strong leaders of the world don't worry about the pictures in the newspaper, the world opinion. They fight a war to win. They don't fight a war to break even or lose or to score points in some public argument. So that's first of all. But in terms of what happened recently, I believe that this war was manufactured by the government of Israel. And this is something that people don't really want to hear, but I think it's true, because the election process in Israel is still ongoing and never seems to end. And there were serious talks that would have booted the prime minister out of office. If there were enough parties that were able to get together and work out all their differences, then they would have been able to boot out the prime minister. And of course, that would throw off a lot of Israel's other agendas and plans. And just right around that time, suddenly there was an outbreak of war in Gaza. Out of the blue, for no clear reason, There was no reason, Davka now, for there to be hundreds and thousands of rockets being fired and fighting in Gaza. There wasn't any clear reason for this. I really believe that it was manufactured by the government to turn people's attention away from what's really going on, which was the mass murder of Jews in Rome a few weeks ago, to turn attention away from changing the government, and to turn attention away from the fact that Israel continues to plan on poisoning its children. People were worried about rockets and bomb shelters and arguing with the world about who's right and who's wrong and who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. People get sucked into that, and they turn their attention away from what's really happening. There's never been a war in Israel that I cared less about than this fighting in Gaza. Now, of course, I don't want any Jews to be harmed or killed, but in terms of the actual war, I didn't care at all. I wasn't keeping score. I wasn't interested in it. It didn't mean anything to me, because to me, I think it was a fake war. There's so much fake news today and so much fakeness. Everything around us is really infused with fakeness today. I'm really concerned with what's really going on behind the scenes. And during this fighting in Gaza, Israel was quietly pushing its agenda to forcibly vaccinate the children and cover up its mass murder of Jews. So I think that we need to not allow them to get away with it, to not get sucked into this game of arguing with people over the world about who's right and who's wrong, and Israel's the good guy and Hamas is the bad guys. We don't need to get sucked into that game. We need to stay focused on what's really going on. Well, first of all, I'm not really sure that that's true. I mean, I know that in different parts of Europe, the lockdowns and the restrictions are terrible. Other parts of the world, Canada, I hear that the lockdowns and the restrictions and the enforcement is absolutely brutal in other parts of the world. So I'm not sure that pound for pound it's actually the worst in Israel. But even if it was, Israel is the epicenter of the entire world. I mean, this is where good and bad, everything starts from here. Israel is the focus of God. God watches Israel more closely than everywhere else in the world. And everything that happens in the world is really centered around Israel. So this is our challenge. This is our fight. And frankly, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else in the world. Whether times are easy or times are difficult, this is the place to be. And Israel is worth fighting for. I don't think the Chilul Hashem comes so much from what the government of Israel is doing. Again, the government of Israel, as far as I'm concerned, they're not Jewish anymore. Whether DNA, they're Jewish or not, is questionable. If they are Jewish, they've gone over to the dark side. And as far as I'm concerned, they're totally outside the pale. They're criminals and they need to be prosecuted. So what they do is not really a Chilul Hashem, because they're not leaders of the Jewish people. They're leaders of an entity called Israel, but they're not the leaders of the Jewish people by any means. The Kiddush Hashem is the way the real Jews, the true Jews, which are ordinary people, the regular people on the street, how they deal with this challenge. We have a bad government. Again, it makes no difference if the government of Israel is British or Turkish or Arab or real Jews, fake Jews, Jews that have gone over to the dark side. Doesn't make any difference. We are not responsible for what they do. We are only responsible for what we do. And if we react to the challenges in the right way, which is number one, turning to Hashem, realizing that we can't overthrow the government. It's not our job to gather an army and wage war against the government of Israel. Our job is to turn to Hashem, to do reasonable things, to not comply with the restrictions and the evil edicts of the government. That certainly is our responsibility. But to educate people, inspire people, strengthen people to be unified and to turn to Hashem, that is our responsibility. That makes a Kiddush Hashem. What the government does is only a chilul of what they do, but they're not representatives of the Jewish people. Now, the world may see the government of Israel as representing the Jewish people, so we have to educate the world as well that, there are real Jews and there are fake Jews, just like there's real news and there's fake news. So we have to teach the world. That's part of what we have to teach them, is that these people are not the leaders of the Jewish people. These are outsiders. These are foreigners that unfortunately have power. And the day will come, hopefully very soon, when they don't have power anymore and we'll have true Jewish leadership. But we have to start on the grassroots level, on the ground level, by building up the Jewish people from the ground up, unifying, turning to Hashem, turning to the Torah, doing chesed, doing mitzvos, and really, truly turning to Hashem and davening for a true Jewish government. That will cause the seismic change that we're looking for, and that will be the source of the Kiddush Hashem.